Hello and welcome to Mental Health Matters with me, Dr. Audrey Tang.
And me, Judith Crozier.
And we have today joining us returning guest expert Hayley Wardle. She is CEO of Linked Change in Bedfordshire, and this is a charity that raises awareness of child exploitation and supports children at risk of abuse. And our topic is codependency. Welcome back to the show, Hayley.
Thank you for having me again. I do love it.
Oh, we love having you. And
Yeah.
the things that you talk about are so important, even though they are quite unpalatable topics sometimes. Let's start with codependency in general, because it brings up a lot of different images, I think, to people, and people have different experiences of what codependency looks like. As a teacher, I would have said I've seen a codependency between a child and their parent, whereby the child always has to go home to sort mum out, and then they have a really fractured relationship, but then mum is always almost treats the child as their best friend and that kind of thing, and it's really hard because they both will then complain about each other, but they're still stuck in this cycle. So that's how I've seen codependency. What about yourself, Jude? Have you experienced it, or?
Yeah, similar really. I have seen that in pupils and students that I've taught as well. I think it must be, I don't know if it's common, but, definitely we've seen that. And I've experienced that in families that not personally, but I've seen it in families that I do personally know. So I think that's the way that I understand it, and I don't know if it kind of manifests itself in different ways. But
I think that's the thing, where you come in here. So just in your own broad experience of codependency, is there any way you define it, or any certain characteristics maybe?
I think it's an interesting word.
Yes.
Because, it's a word that is thrown around quite flippantly. Oh, I'm codependent, this is codependency. And for me, I think some people take it on almost as a personality trait. Oh, I'm a codependent, therefore I need to do X, Y, Z. Whereas really it's about those behaviours, like disordered behaviour patterns. And I think we can see it in so many different dynamics, and it can be interpreted in so many different dynamics, some in a healthy way.
Yeah.
A baby is codependent upon a parent, but it's about thinking when does that codependency become a negative, disrupted behaviour?
I think you've called something out that's so important here, because we see this with all sorts of diagnoses in mental health. I've got ADHD, therefore I behave like. And actually it's not. It's a description, and that description helps people manage those tendencies, whatever they are. And I think that's absolutely key about codependency. And in the healthy way, this just brings me back to the conversation we had last week with Medina Demibras. She's a sex therapist. She talked about a sort of a codependency she sees in relationships with, say, somebody with ADHD who tells their partner, I've got too much to manage, you tell me what I'm wearing today, and that's their agreement. It's negotiated. People are all happy with it. Everyone else comes and looks at it and goes, oh, it's very controlling, or is it? And it's not. It's negotiated.
it's a management tool, really, isn't it?
It's that conversation, and that's that conversation piece that I think that's really important in any relationship. You've got to be able to have that conversation. In a codependent relationship, you can't have that. You struggle. You can't have. If you are the codependent, you struggle to have that conversation within that relationship.
I think that's pulled out one of the key aspects of it. So when we're talking about these parent-child relationships that I've seen, what they're doing is they're having the conversations with me as the teacher. My mum does this, or at parents' evening, my child does that. But they're not having the conversation with each other. So it is, therefore, a codependency behaviour, because it's not negotiated. The troubles people are having aren't being discussed.
That makes sense. That's the sort of clear difference, isn't it?
It's that parentification piece.
Yes.
And that, I think that's what makes the difference as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, really nice. So that brings us, I guess, into our first questions.
Yeah, so really, can you explain what codependency is.
How it manifests, I guess.
Yeah, and yes, and what might it look like?
Yeah, so I think codependency can be different for different people and set of behaviours. So really, I think the term was coined almost out of the origins of the Alcoholics Anonymous kind of era, when 12-step programs, all of those things, and they looked at the relationship that the person with the alcohol abuse and their caretaker, so to speak, and found that actually the codependency was there within that relationship, within that caretaker role. And then, as time's gone by, it's kind of broadened. But it is that caretaker, it is that parentification, it is about relying on another person for your own satisfaction, your own needs, because you need to feel wanted, you need to feel needed, you need to feel that love. So it's almost that lack of self-identity. And that can come out of trauma. It's very common that if you've experienced some form of childhood trauma, then you can develop those codependency behaviours as a way of coping and adapting to that trauma, and as you go through life within relationships.
Yeah. So it is sometimes it's that, and you see these in these old books. I remember studying The House of Bernarda Alba when I was doing drama, and it was about the Spanish family, and the matriarch has children, so the last one will stay at home and take care of her.
Oh my word.
It's voiced.
Okay.
And that it plays out in all kinds of struggles within the family, but it is that feeling of, I need you to complete me and to make me seen and visible, and that's really quite a demand if it's a parent-child situation on that child.
Yeah, incredibly difficult, and some of that trauma that you experience can sometimes be about that child and parent relationship where those codependency behaviours have been sort of born out of effectively. So things such as I need you to do X, Y, Z. If you don't do X, Y, Z, I will feel a particular way.
Yes.
That oversharing. This, this is a child. Why are you talking to your child about emotions, behaviours, your feelings, and and that can place a huge impact on how a child then develops their own sense of self, their own emotions.
So interesting.
Yeah, it is. And how might it then play out in romantic relationships? What behaviours would you see in a codependent romantic relationship?
And I think that's really difficult because you can't always see it. Sometimes it takes for other people. I think as always, sharing a little bit about, me. For me, I didn't know what codependency was. Once someone said it and I went, okay, I recognise these behaviours in myself, then I started to see it, I could work on it, I could develop it and start to understand it. But it takes a period of time. It's not something that comes off straight away. If you're in a very abusive relationship, then sometimes that codependency can develop quite quickly. If you're not necessarily, then it can sometimes be a lot harder to see. So for me, I actively sought people that needed help, that needed support, because that's how I felt. I would get my own self gratification. I would actively seek partners that had issues, most of the time substance misuse issues, going back to the Alcoholics Anonymous, because I felt that I needed to be the person that sorted them out, that fixed them, that solved all the problems and solved the world. But unfortunately that then led to very self-destructive relationships, behaviours, and dealing within myself. And so I think there's a healthy level of codependency within a relationship.
Yes, of course.
But then there is a side that actually, if you are susceptible to being a codependent because of childhood experiences,
Yes.
then actually within a relationship, you're almost going to actively seek those relationships, because when a relationship was good, it was strong, it was healthy, I didn't need to fix this person, I was bored.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't meeting my own needs.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And that's because the choice of partner had been based on the need, not how, I don't know, well they sang, or how, you know, fun they were, or whatever.
It was based upon that individual and how I could fix that individual.
Yeah.
So this really reminds me of a client I worked with some time ago, where they had met their partner at a time where they were experiencing a lot of loss in their family, and they were a very different type of person at that point. They needed someone to take care of them. Over time, what had happened was, of course, they'd recovered, they'd processed all of those things, but now there was a struggle between the relationship dynamic, because now that other person didn't know who they were anymore, because they no longer needed to look after or take care, and they were invited along actually as a partner, not a caregiver. They didn't know how to behave.
Wow, yeah.
It's just so, I guess it sort of brings me to the next question, which is, do relationships start off codependent, or can they just become codependent, or do they change over time and something happens?
I think it could be all of them.
True.
You know, I think that, like I said before, you know, in a lot of codependent relationships, it doesn't start off as codependent, because you're still adapting and learning each other and understanding each other's behaviours. If you have had those experiences earlier in life that have almost created those behaviours and how you work and how you seek that caretaker, you know, sort of pattern, then as the relationship develops, the codependency can grow and become worse. I do know couples, you know, where there has been real codependency issues, but actually they've worked through it, they've come out the other side, they've recognised those behaviours, they've got to understand, they've got to know each other. And, you know, for me, knowing that I have those codependent behaviours, having been through a 12-step program with codependency, all of those different things, I have to check myself and constantly do a, hold on a minute, is this behaviour? Am I doing this because of this? Or is this just something that's
needed
natural,
at the time?
That's natural. It, you know, it's needed. We all need other people, you know. It's a part of life. It's when that those scales are tipped and it becomes unhealthy and unbalanced.
And becomes your identity almost.
Yes.
I think it's just so interesting. Do you mind, and this is quite a personal question, so please feel free to say no, but sharing one or two of those traits that you would recognise in yourself, that, just in case, because I think that would resonate with people.
Yeah, so I think for me, you know, there's the different personality traits with codependency. For me, I'm definitely an enabler.
Right.
Definitely an enabler. But also have that element of control. So, you know, in one relationship, I enabled the substance misuse. However, because I controlled it, because I thought, actually, if I know what he's doing, when he's doing it, where he is, how he is, I am at least in the vicinity, I can control this situation.
Yes.
If he then went out on a Friday night with his mates, well, my anxiety would be through the roof, because I'm not aware of what he's doing, where he's going, what he's taking, what he's drinking, all of those different types of things. And that would cause real problems, which would then cause arguments that would, you know. So I'm a people pleaser. So it's that kind of mixture. But there's also, things such as I could feel the energy shift, because there was always a lot of, I consider myself to be able to read energy quite easily, because I'm, very empathic, which again is another sign of being codependent. But I could start to feel the energy shift in the relationship. So actually what I would then do is, okay, I know he's at work. I'm going to go around his house. I'm going to scrub his house top to bottom, clean it, sparkling, all of those things, because I can sense that this cloud is brewing, where the dynamics are going to change, the relationship's going to change, there's going to be an argument. When there is an argument, it would be full on argument. So I'm going to go and clean his house, because that will please him. And then he can't shout at me, because I've just done something for him. There's other personality types, such as the martyr. I'm definitely not a martyr. Other people might say differently, but I never think that people fit into boxes and into categories. I think that you can identify with so many different of the personality traits around it.
I think that's so important, because yes, there's sort of generally outlined enabler, and that's the person that sort of helps you carry on whatever it is you probably ought not to be doing. But then you've linked that really nicely with the controller, and I see how that works. If you're in control, it's like if I buy my children condoms and they're having sex in my house, they're having sex in my house. The fact that there might be 13, that's where you suddenly think, oh, that's where that becomes a problem. Yes, you've got the pleaser, which is different to the enabler, because the pleaser is just, you want them to be happy. You want people to be happy. It's not even the enabler of, I will let you carry on doing the thing.
Yeah, because that never made me happy.
No.
I didn't want him to be doing this. However, if I created this environment and then managed to be able to work with him to be able to stop.
Yes.
And actually, I'm enabling it, but I'm controlling it, because I'm trying to reduce it and create this environment where he's not doing it, rather than going, this person needs to work on themselves.
Yes, exactly.
What, is this in your job?
Is this my job? Is this my issue? Yeah, it's so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the martyr is that sort of, oh, well, you do it and I'll be fine, I'll be okay,
Don't worry about me, it's okay. Which is, I always find the martyr is very much that parent mode. That is that parent mode of, oh, I'd love you to do this, but don't worry, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, and you feel it. The minute you say it, everyone's back's going. But that's so interesting, because I think people don't realise that this is a dysfunctional relationship, whether it's codependent or not. Those 4 behaviours, any combination thereof, they're dysfunctional. And
absolutely.
They're not healthy for you. They're not healthy for the other person either, because the enabler then could push that person further into more problems. The controller can make another person lose all confidence in themselves and their choices and their ability to do anything. The pleaser can either generate more problems for themselves, or actually end up not pleasing the person, but because you've just cleaned their house, they don't know how to say it. So,
and that's what I mean. You do those behaviours because you think, well, actually, this is going to make this a lot easier. This is going to smooth down this response. This is, and you do it, and you do it without even thinking, feeling, recognising any of those different types of things.
It's so interesting how it propagates the dysfunction, and even though pleasing and enabling, they feel like really nice things to do, they're really not. Hayley, we're keeping you and we'll be back after a clip from the last time you were on the show. We have questions for you from our viewers, because you were very kindly on our show before talking about exploitation, and that's generated a lot of conversation. So I was hoping to put the following to you today. This is
ahead.
The topic of the realities of sexual, online and criminal exploitation. And one of the things that really came out from the show was about why victims of exploitation are so afraid to report their experiences? What's going on there?
Well, I think if we think about exploitation as a whole to begin with, there's so many different elements of it. So for some of our young people, they could be being sexually exploited, they could be being criminally exploited, there could be elements of online and even elements of financial exploitation that we're seeing a real increase in at the moment. And young people we know young people, they like to keep everything to themselves. There is a lot of fear, there's a lot of scaremongering, and I think the awareness around exploitation isn't there. Therefore, young people maybe don't even know that they're being groomed and exploited in the first place.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. We are here with Hayley Wardle, and this is such a great conversation about what can only be termed as a dysfunctional way of interacting, but we are talking about codependency. And we've been talking about codependency and what it looks like in relationships. I want to pull that thread a little bit more. So for a child who has been in a codependent relationship with a parent, so maybe the child has not realised the parent's been oversharing with them, but they are having to save their parent all the time. That child feels that they can't go out because mum or dad might need them, or because, actually, mum or dad doesn't like me hanging around in that way. It's begun to, I guess, dictate their lives without them realising. 2 questions. How can they break the cycle? But how could that play out in their own relationships? Is it like finding someone mum or dad will approve of or something darker?
It's really hard for a child because you're still forming your identity, you're forming yourself, you're forming your emotions. So actually, when you're in that relationship with your parents, mum, dad, whatever it might be, you are learning, you are growing, you are developing, and therefore you are learning, growing, developing based upon that social interaction that you have within that home and that family dynamic. Yes, there's other relationships, out at school, all of the teachers. However, that's that primary relationship between a parent. So I think it's really hard for a child or young person to understand and even see that dynamic, and probably until later on. There is always the risk of, if you're honest and you talk, which, it is the best way to do everything, communicate is the best way to do everything. But you don't know if the parent is codependent and has created that codependent environment, then that child is not going to feel able to speak up if they even do recognise it. Sometimes that might cause arguments. So, the difference might be that there's 2 children. One recognises this, sees all of this, and does the rebel, stays out, doesn't care, does the arguments, has the arguments with mum, dad, leaves the house, as soon as they can get out of that house, they can get out of that house. There is the other child that actually is the person pleaser and has seen this dynamic between sibling and mum, and actually feels really, really guilty that that behaviour has taken place, therefore overcompensates, does everything. They then don't want to leave that dynamic. They can't manage that dynamic. And when it is time to then leave home, it's really difficult to break that. And you might not even understand and see that dependency upon that parent. In relationships, that then those feelings, those emotions, all of that comes with you. It goes with you. And I think codependency always goes very much hand in hand with so many different things. I mean, even for me in a work environment, grooming creates codependence. The process of grooming is to create codependency, which is why the young people that are within that exploitation are codependent upon the perpetrator and the groomer, because they've created that environment for them. So although they might not have had those experiences then, they've got those experiences now. In terms of relationships, you don't often see those behaviours. You don't recognise those behaviours and what you're doing within yourself, and therefore that intrinsically somehow along the way creates that pathway for those codependent behaviours to continue within a relationship. Then let's say you get into a relationship that potentially is an abusive relationship, that then escalates those codependency behaviours and traits even more so because of the dynamics that are within that relationship.
That's so interesting, because I'm just thinking about somebody else that I know. I think they've created a codependency in their children out of love, because it comes from, I give my children everything because I never had anything, which means the children go to public school, or anything happens, mum will pay for it, and it will disappear. But I can see with the way you've described that how that child, they are in a lovely, lovely life. Anything is they can depend on mum. So if they look for that in a partner, somebody who can pay for everything, so they can end up becoming dependent on someone who could really abuse them.
And I think the key thing about that relationship is, yes, it's great to want to provide everything for your children because you've not had it, or you just want to do that life, but you're not creating independence. And the whole point of, unfortunately, having a child is that you have to bring them up to be able to be independent from you. They have to be able to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. It's almost saying, I've got this bundle of joy that I absolutely love and adore, and I want to keep it forever, but actually, you've got to let them go off and live, and they become over reliant on you for absolutely everything. You know, oh God, I've had a huge argument with my boyfriend. I'm going to phone mum because that's mum's my best friend. Mum will
sort it out.
Mum's my best friend. Dad's my best best friend. No, you're a parent.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah, really hard. So if you're in that kind of relationship, then how easy is it to extract yourself from codependency, especially if there is a reward? So if you're the favourite child and, you know, you're aware of that, and so therefore you might receive rewards, so it kind of favours you to stay in it.
Yes, I'm at a public school, I can get, my parents will pay for everything.
Or the parents are just nicer to
you
rather than your sibling because they like you better.
And I think that's the problem. I don't think you can when you're a child. You know, it's that thing of how do you stand up and say this, and how do you realise it, and how do you recognise it? Because if you don't know anything else apart from this, then how do you kind of break away from it? Because that's creating your self-worth. Your self-worth is then based upon, mum provides everything for me. I get to go to public school. I'm privileged. If I want a new pair of trainers, it's all right. Mum will buy me a new pair of trainers. So that is shaping your identity, your value, your self-worth. In the role of it being a parent and a child, and the child is the caretaker, you then have the enormous sense of guilt that actually, if I leave this situation, what is then going to happen to mum or dad? Or sometimes you're that child that just wants to be seen. You want to be heard, and therefore by being that caretaker, you're being seen, you're being heard.
In a role.
In a way that's not healthy.
And then, you know, and again, that's why I think codependency is so linked with trauma as well, and being able to understand trauma. And, you know, we could do a whole other section on trauma bonds, and but
Gosh.
Yeah, so interesting.
So
It's so
deep,
nuanced, isn't it,
yeah,
as
and
well?
so complex.
Yeah, really. So if you're a child who has always learned to put others' needs first, how do you start recognising your own needs and, you know, fulfilling your own needs?
I think I got to 40 when I started to recognise my own needs and my own worth. But it took someone... No, because I think people would say it along the way. People would say, but what about you? What do you want? Think about yourself. Take time for yourself. You know, all of those different types of things. Hayley, you busy yourself with absolutely everything and everyone. And don't ever think about yourself and your self-worth. And it took for someone to really sit me down and say, hold on a minute, step back, look at this picture of life. This is codependent behaviour.
Wow.
Understand what codependency is. Understand where the origins of your codependency come from. Start to recognise that, and then you can start to learn and develop those behaviours and techniques to compensate. I still overcompensate, so sometimes I will be like, I probably am the martyr now. I am not doing this because I think that means that I am being codependent, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And I get really stuck in my way. No. And then you think, actually, this is just a simple request.
Yeah.
This is healthy.
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? But I almost... Sometimes I overcompensate for those behaviours because I know those behaviours, as I've identified those behaviours. I know what comes out of it, and I know the things that I then do, so I overcompensate for it.
I think that self-awareness is so important because I think that is about the only way you can break any form of patterns that you have. And what's really interesting, whilst you're talking, I'm just thinking of a friend of mine who has been caregiver. She's the sensible one. So 3 sisters, she's the sensible one. And I noticed, because I'm quite a control freak, so if we go on holiday together, I'm often deciding where to go and everything. I will always ask her opinion, but she never wants to give me her opinion because she's happy to just, it's okay, what makes everybody happy? And it's really difficult to kind of encourage, no, it's okay, you can choose that. Just because I might plan things, and it doesn't mean I'm not looking for you to say something. But I see that as a pattern of the whole relationship. And as much as she struggles with her sisters, she's still very dependent on being part of the group.
It's that reward piece, because that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that reward, that perk, whatever that might be, and however you have to get to that reward, that perk. But it is about that wanting to be seen, that need to be seen, to be valued, to be heard, and how do I manage to get to that point?
Yes.
And again, especially in an abusive relationship, I think, you know, you could go through a period of understanding you're in a situation, love bombing, where, you know, again, I had it, there was huge amounts of love bombing, then would disappear for 3 days. And that then again creates certain environments and certain behaviours. But for me, I just wanted to be seen, I wanted to be valued, I wanted to be heard. And therefore would do all of these different things and behaviours and traits just to be seen, to be valued and to be heard.
Yeah, and I guess we'd fall back onto the ones that have worked with our parents, whether that was the pleaser or the enabler or the person who got everything right. You'll fall back into those old patterns because that's what got you seen last time you weren't seen. This is so fascinating. So you're staying with us, and we'll be back after a clip from the last time Hayley was on the show.
For us, it's about trying to teach young people what is healthy, what is unhealthy, what is control, what is independence, what is appropriate language, what is unacceptable behaviour, and where that line is. When someone is groomed, it then makes it even more difficult, because the grooming process is about building trust in that young person in that first place.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. This is such an important conversation about the dysfunctional relationship that we call codependency. Hayley, now, giving and people pleasing can sometimes be equated with control. So there's that complexity there, because you give, and if I'm nice to you, you're going to hang around with me a bit more. It's very subtle. But giving is also really positive and really kind and really generous and really lovely. And so how do you unpack some of these pleasing tendencies, generous tendencies, to appreciate them for their own sake?
Yeah, I think it is, going back to that, being really self-aware.
Yeah.
It's breaking it down and thinking, what are the reasons as to why I am doing this?
Yes.
What is the value in me doing this? Is this just a nice gesture? So it's Christmas and I've bought a nice tin of biscuits to give to my next door neighbours. That's
nice.
Kind, that's
Yes.
nice, that's generous. I'm not expecting any outcome from
Yes.
it apart from for them to go, oh, that's kind. It's a kind thing. But going back to that, I'm going to go and clean his house top to toe.
Yeah.
What value did I have out of that, apart from knowing that I was maybe going to get peace for one or two days? There would not be a reason for him to then cause an argument, fall out with me, overuse substances. I controlled that situation. So, but I had no value out of that. There was nothing there for me. But yet I was giving, and yet I was pleasing. So it's thinking about, well, what is healthy? What is a healthy? What is kind? What is a normal trait to have? And what is the extreme version of that? Because I'm not getting anything out of that apart from being a caretaker, apart from relying on another person for my own self-worth, for my own happiness.
There's two really important points you make there. It's the extremity of the gift. So if you've bought your neighbour a car, very different to the box of chocolates. You clearly want something. But also, it's when you buy your neighbour a box of chocolates at Christmas, you aren't expecting anything in return, but it's so free with that lack of expectation. But the cleaning somebody's house, you are expecting 2 days of peace.
Yeah.
You are expecting something. Of course, that's not healthy value.
Yeah.
But it's almost in my mind, I haven't even thought about this. I haven't, in my head, I haven't woke up on a Sunday morning knowing that he's on a shift and gone, oh, I'm going to go and clean his house because I can sense the energy, I can do all of those things. I just got up in the morning and just went and done that and just thought, oh, right, I'm going to go and do this because it's a really nice thing. Self-reflection then goes, that's why you did it, but you're in this situation and circumstances, you just think you're being nice.
Yes.
I'm just being nice and being kind, I'm doing a good thing.
So I think there's also an element of, if you then begin to resent it or begin to get angry that you didn't get what you were expecting, that's got to be a trigger to saying, oh, there's something. I don't think anyone would ever resent, I gave my neighbour a box of chocolates, they didn't give me a box of chocolates. Honestly, really don't think that's the issue. I've got very nice neighbours, though. They always give us.
Oh, I feel so guilty. Christmas, oh God, I didn't sort that one out.
It's like, oh gosh, yeah, and then I've got to get them nice chocolates, And that's a whole other issue. But I think there's so much depth to the way that this manifests, that self-awareness and actually in a safe space with therapy, those are about the only ways that you can actually get some of that, I think.
And I couldn't see it until the time that I was away. But I was addicted to this person. I had my own addictions, and it was to this person. And then you think back on other relationships, and I think, yeah, and all of those ones that I had this feeling, you know, this different type of relationship with, that I thought was a great relationship, all had the same behaviours, all had the same patterns, all had the same issues, concerns, but to me it became my own form of addiction, so to speak.
It is. Addiction is actually, I know you started with the word addiction, it becomes an addiction.
And because I think, you know, for a lot of people with substance misuse, codependency is a very common, you know, when I talk to them, codependency is a very common thread within their behaviours as well, you know. I was listening to something once, one man said that actually he found through research that people found it easier to break addictions to drugs or alcohol, but codependency was a lot harder to break, because it's based on a lifetime of behaviours, patterns, reward gratifications. We could go on about chemicals in the brain, or, you know, trauma bonding, all of those different types of things. And so it is a form of addiction, but it's about a behaviour rather than a substance.
Yes.
Or a person.
Yeah.
So on that, how do you help somebody separate their own identity, their needs, their wants, their choices from the object of their affection, the person that they are codependent on?
I think it's really thinking about the whys, the whats, the wheres. So what value am I getting out of this? What reward, self-reward, not in terms of that self-identity, but what reward am I getting from this? What is the benefits of me doing this? How is this making me feel? Because yes, at times when you get that codependent reward, you have that dopamine boost, but actually most of the time you're feeling not seen, you're feeling not heard, you lack that self-worth, you lack that identity. Okay, so why do I feel this lack of self-worth and this lack of identity, even though I'm doing all of these behaviours? And then you can start to break it down, and you can pick that apart. You know, you can even go back to thinking, where do these behaviours come from? You know, if you have experienced abuse in your childhood, it's quite easy to see where those behaviours have then kind of come from. If you haven't, then it's thinking about your childhood and thinking about, okay, if I feel like this now with that lack of self-worth and identity, what's the timeline? What are the other times in my life when I have also always felt this, or when did I start feeling this, and start to be able to pick apart those behaviours to create that bigger picture. But it is that self-worth. It is that working on yourself and your own identity and giving yourself that time and breathing space. For me, it was a big sheet of A3.
Wow, yeah.
Mind map, this, and then you can start to look at an identity, and it's really simple, but you don't think.
And we don't have time, do we? And I think the worst part is codependent tendencies can be exacerbated in friendships as well. That's what they call toxic relationships. But you've got those friends where you come away thinking, what did I feel?
I've just sat here for an hour and you've not asked me once how I am.
And it's just playing out of old patterns. And I think it's so important to do a lot of that work so it doesn't just come out in, I hate everybody, which is not healthy for everyone. So,
no, very true.
It's huge.
So, related to everything you've just been saying, how can we help the person that the codependent person was helping? How can we help them in a healthy way?
I think it's about managing. So it's about saying, I've been doing these, knowing, recognising, we've done this piece here, I recognise the behaviours that I'm doing to try and help this person. But actually, am I enabling?
Yes.
Am I doing this in the right way? Because actually this person here in their own right needs to work on themselves.
Yeah.
You can't be the person that constantly is there to save them. You can be there for someone, but then you can be going above and beyond when that person maybe does not want to, do those changes. So you've got to. It's a fine balance. It's about trying to think about what can I do to help this person without destroying myself in that process.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's not easy sometimes to stand back when you can see that somebody needs help and you want to be the one to help them, but then they don't change, and 30 years later they're still doing the same things and you're still trying to help.
I mean, you think about that dynamic again with a parent and say, there's two siblings. One sibling becomes an alcoholic, and the other sibling says, actually, tough love, all of those things, they've got to sort it out for themselves, but the parent then becomes the caretaker because they're a child and they cut off the other child, and actually at what point are they enabling rather than trying to. And so it is thinking about that control, that enabling, the pleasing, all of those different types of things, and finding the right balance in saying you possibly need help, you need support, I'm willing to go with you to set appointment. I phoned and make the appointment, I'll come with you, but you have to do the rest yourself.
That makes sense.
It does, and it's so hard to do, but it does. But it is important.
This is so interesting. I think we could carry on talking about this for a long time. But where can we and other people find out more about you and what you do?
So to find about me, you can visit our website, which is www.linktochange.org.uk, and you can find out all about everything that we do, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Hayley Wardle.
Brilliant. We'll head over to Test the Trend.
A good exercise to do, I think, when thinking about codependent behaviours is to look at what's happening around you and think about those behaviours and how that makes you work. A really good idea is to put together a mind map. So mapping out all the factors in your life and thinking about what are the behaviours that I do in those different factors, whether that's relationships, whether that's work, friendships, and then really look to kind of break it down further. There's also a piece around looking at behaviour patterns and a timeline throughout childhood that will really help you to identify those behaviours. And then that self-reflection piece. So being really, really aware, thinking about, okay, if I'm doing these behaviours, actually what can I do to change those behaviours? What help and what support do I need? But getting it all down on paper always works.
This is always the favourite part of mine for any show that we've done, because we reflect on the amazing things that our guests say and what we take from today. And there is so much to take from today. Thank you, Hayley. You've just been, you've opened up this area of discussion in a way that I wasn't expecting. And one of the key things being, I can see codependency as a dysfunction. And that was not what I was calling it before. I was just happy, it's called codependency. And you're right, it softens it. Yeah. And it's not. It's not a soft behaviour at all.
Definitely. I think that it's people use the term too flippantly.
Yes.
Really use it flippantly, and they're not thinking about those behaviours and how much those behaviours are instilled in your practice. And breaking behaviours are really hard. It takes a lot of time, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of understanding to step back and develop. But there's so much material out there on it, and it's really an interesting thing to look at. And you know, it sounds wrong to say, it's one of my favourites. Codependency is one of my favourites, you know, having been there, having, you know, everything that I do, because it fits into everyone's life. It's something that every single person at some point can relate to. But it's interesting to see how it impacts different people and how you work with it.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, well, I can relate to, I can think of so many family members and friends and people from, you know, my past where I can see this now, and I never had a name for it. But I just knew that, you know, in certain situations that's not quite right, that feels wrong, it feels really uncomfortable, and I couldn't really put my finger on it, because you know, if sometimes it's so subtle that if you say, "Oh, I don't really like that," and then the person comes back at you, well, you're weird. That's just normal. It's a normal relationship with my parent. When it's not, and you've kind of made it so clear.
Yeah, it's so hard to break that cycle with the parent and to see that as well. So if you know your codependency has come from your parent in your childhood, you've seen it, you've recognised it, you've worked on it, you know. How do I break that? How do I do that without causing damage to that relationship? Because there's nothing wrong with that relationship, but actually as a child growing up, you were everything. You were the caretaker, you were everything. And so that's why I just find it so interesting. And I didn't know it, I didn't see it, and given worked in the field with, you know, sexual abuse, trauma, exploitation for so long, like I say, it took till I was 40 and someone went, have a look at codependency.
Wow.
Gosh. But I think you make such a good point here, because on the one hand, you've got somebody saying, oh, I speak to my mum all the time, and everyone goes, oh, you've got a nice relationship with your mum. And they don't think any further that it's dysfunctional or anything like that. And similarly with things like love bombing, it can come across, oh, he's so caring, it's so nice. So it actually starts off, or not starts off, it can be described and verbalised as something perfectly lovely and, you know, relationship goals. And then it's not.
And then it is, there's somebody I know, I wouldn't say she's a friend, she's someone I worked with actually, and she describes her child as her rock, and since they've been small, and that's always made me feel uncomfortable, but I couldn't verbalise it, but now I can after today.
But it's that difference, isn't it, of saying my child is my rock, I rely on them for my emotional support, they get me through life, they do everything for me, or my child is my rock because my child
is amazing.
You know, is amazing. It's that classic thing of saying, you know, your child changes when you have a child. It does change you. It changes how you approach things and how you approach life. There's two very different
intentions. And this one is the former. So they rely on their child for all the things you said. And that's why it's always resonated as really uncomfortable. But I couldn't put my finger on it. So but you're right, because there are subtleties still, and a friend, you know, calls her children her rocks, but for the good reason. And so, you know, and you think that's really lovely.
I'm doing this for them because I want them to have a good life, or I'm doing this for them because of, you know, the over reliance and dependence. It's that line.
It is.
We're always walking that line.
And then when you say always, it is a time, because then it goes on to, I'm doing this for them, but now I'm in debt because I've sent my child to private school. Then it becomes even more problematic. So it's so complex. Oh my goodness. We really should talk about this all day, because I think it's just fascinating. But we are out of time. Thank you so much, Hayley.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Brilliant to have you on the show. And from all of us at Mental Health Matters, have a healthy week.